All right, we are live. So I'll give y'all just a second to come on. We've already shared this. I think I'm like a minute late or something. 2 minutes late, 3 minutes late, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in then. So welcome back to Quick Start Coaching Code Live Bootcamp. Actually, I can move this back a little bit now. Very nice. So today, as we have been covering, I'm going to offer you a distinction which kind of qualifies as or acts as a key to the lock of the door of successfully starting your coaching business. And today, this actually came up on the spur of the moment today in the leadership meeting with the leaders and organizers of your masterminds. So, and you know, it just reminded me of how often this comes up in the boot camp. And it actually comes up in a lot of coaching relationships. So this is something that you could actually apply to the work that you do with your clients as well. And that is, it's more of a distinction. This is not as nuts and bolts of what as compared to what we've been covering recently. This is around your goals, around how you set goals and how you handle goals. And we're going to talk about action goals versus outcome goals. Now, this distinction, this kind of way to distinguish these two different qualities of goals or types of goals is not a common thing, because generally speaking, action goals are actually not treated as goals at all in the personal growth community, or even for the most part, the business and the planning communities that utilize and take advantage of goals as well. But they are really, really helpful and important. And it's important to distinguish which of these types of goals are best for you to employ in the boot camp, especially when you're just starting something. You've got to clarify which type of goal would be best for you to set. Today, as many other times during the work I've done with y'all getting started in your coaching business, someone brought up, you know, I have a goal to I just want to take action on this and this and this. And you know, I want to do my prospecting. I want to make my calls. I just want to get myself to do those things. And by the end of the conversation, they had a completely different goal, because at the end of the day, they realized, you know, they were not going to be motivated by the goals that they set. And they said, you know, I want to, I actually want to get some paying clients here. And they set that as their goal instead. And vice versa. I can't remember the last time this has happened, but it does happen from time to time. Somebody came up with a goal that they wanted to get 5 paying clients. And I had a fairly in-depth conversation with them about that goal. And by the end of the conversation, they decided to change their goal to just making 3 hours of calls each week that they were in the boot camp. For instance, I'm generalizing because I can't remember an exact instance like that, but this happens all the time. So why did these conversations end with a massive change to the focal point of that goal? Not that their overall direction was different, but you know, they simply didn't have the same outcome, the same focused outcome at the end of that. And this is the distinction that is the reason behind that. And the reason why you might need to make a change in your goal now that we're a week into the boot camp, it might be the right thing to do. And I think, you know, I would have thought originally that this would have been a good idea to discuss right from the get-go, like right from stage one. And not that we don't talk about goals in week one of the boot camp. In Quick Start, we definitely do. But I think it's actually better that we're going to talk about it right now, in the beginning of week 2. And yes, it would be great if, like, right from the start, you have the exact perfect goal. But in a way, I think it's even better that if you have the goal that's not going to work well for you, you might actually be more clear about that at this point than you would have last week, even if we covered this distinction. So this comparison between these two approaches is going to be, I think, a perfect timing for where we are right now in the bootcamp. But what I want you to do in this conversation is take out your goal, whatever goal you've already clarified. You should have a goal for the boot camp by now. I mean, you're already a week into the boot camp. You're a quarter of the way through the boot camp. So first of all, congratulations, you made it that far. But in addition to that, you got to have a goal at this point. So if you don't have a goal, you should come up with one by the end of this conversation, or come up with one right now. So bring out your goal and think about your goal in light of these characteristics that we're going to discuss and compare. All right. So action versus outcome goals, or action goals versus outcome goals. So do your goals, or does your goal in the boot camp, does it scare you? Does it intimidate you? Does it bore you? You know, do you think about it and just kind of get, fall asleep as opposed to get excited about it? Or is a goal in the boot camp or in general in your life, is that something that you just avoid even dealing with? Do you avoid even setting goals? Do you feel like even if you do set goals, like actually setting the goal doesn't help you? Like it doesn't seem to be a real force that pushes you forward, or that draws you forth into your outcome or your destiny, that just doesn't seem to help, doesn't seem to make a difference, or maybe it even hinders you in some way. If you said yes to any of those questions, if any of those things actually resonate for you, then this is a really important conversation that we're about to have. So what's an action goal? An action goal is a goal that answers the question, what actions must I take? Or more specifically, what action, singular, must I take? It's just a goal that answers that question, the action that you need to take. An outcome goal. Now, these are more classic goals. I mean, most goals fall into the outcome goal category for most people, not everybody, but most of the time, what we normally think of as like SMART goals are outcome-oriented goals, or outcome goals. The outcome goal, an outcome goal is a goal that answers the question, what result must I achieve? What result must I achieve? So if your goal answers the question, hey, what do I have to do? Like, what action should I take? You got an action goal. If your goal answers the question, what result do I want at the end of all the work, at the end of all the action, you've got an outcome goal. Does that make sense? Does that, you get the difference? Let me know if you do. I want to make sure I'm not confusing anybody here. This should be a pretty simple distinction at the end of the day. It's like, are you focused on action? Is your goal focused on action? Or is the goal focused on the result that happens at the end of the action, the thing that you ultimately want to achieve? Very different goals. They could lead in the same direction, but hopefully you get the sense that they're not the same. The focal point of that goal is very, very different. Whole different aspect of this lineage of things that are going to actually come forth. Now, I'm going to go into right now the upsides and downsides of each type of goal. And I'm also going to cover what type of person, maybe is a way to say this, would which goal work for? Like, who does an action goal work for? And in what situation or what type of individual would an outcome goal work for instead? Okay, so upsides and downsides of both, the kind of strengths and weaknesses of each type of goal, limitations, if you will, as well. And then, like, who do you need to be for that to be the type of goal that actually works best for you? So let's start with action. So an action goal, lots of upsides to action goals. These are great. I love action goals. I'm personally much more of a fan of action goals than outcome goals. So a couple upsides. First of all, one upside is obvious. I mean, an action goal focuses on action. If you need the focus to be on action versus like the results that you ultimately want to get, action goal is probably the way to go, because it's going to help you tremendously in that way. Make sense? An action goal doesn't really worry about the result. You know, and you have to focus on, like, am I going to get the result or not? Is it going to work out? You don't get intimidated by those things. It's not so scary. It's like, hey, I just got to focus on like today and the action I'm going to take. And if I do that, I won. I'm a winner. I achieved my goal. So it's easier to win that game because you're not waiting until, whether or not it worked out in the end. It's not like, just having to wait around on pins and needles, like, okay, what's going to happen? How's it going to go? You can make it go one way or the other by just taking action or not. You know, that's the way that you achieve or don't achieve the goal. So it's all about action. You don't even have to worry about the result and whether you achieve a result, because it doesn't matter. The result isn't the goal. The action is the goal. Keeps it simple, keeps it step by step. If you have an action goal, it's like, okay, what's the next action? That's the goal. Set that goal, accomplish that goal, right? It doesn't get ahead of itself. It's not like 5 years in the future, maybe someday. It's now focused. Outcome goals, not so much. We'll get into that in a second, but you know, unless you have an action goal, usually most goals are all about like the future, some fantasy, some idea. I'm not saying they're fantasies, but it's kind of like that. It's a little mysterious. It's out there in the weeds somewhere. It's in the smoke and mirrors of the future. It's esoteric in a way, because who can say what's going to happen in the future? I might be dead by then, you know? So let's not get morbid here, but you get the idea. So keeps it simple, keeps it step by step, keeps it in the now. It also gives you, I think I kind of alluded to this, it keeps it it keeps it, sorry, let me backpedal here. It keeps you in total control. Like for the most part, if you have an action goal, you are 100% in control of whether or not you accomplish that goal. Especially if you're the one that needs to take the action. When you manage other people, by the way, this is great action. It's great to have action goal rather than outcome, because if you've got somebody that's not like the most productive individual, you just focus them on the next action, and it's less intimidating for them, and it's easier for you to actually enjoy the process, because it's more likely that they'll actually accomplish the goal that you offer them or that they set with your management or with your coaching for that matter as well. So yeah, it just leaves you in total control of your goal when you set an action goal, because generally speaking, it's overgeneralization, you are in total control of your actions. I'm in total control of the action. I set an action goal. I'm in total control of the accomplishment of the goal. So it's a really friendly goal in these ways specifically. Who's this good for? So it's good for somebody who's maybe a little non-committal, like they keep kind of like, if you tend to weasel your way out of commitments and actions, if you tend to kind of get lost and confused around like end goals, outcome goals, and you need to just pin yourself down and make sure you do the thing that you need to do today, this is what you need. I mean, you need an action goal. If you're scared by goals, if goals intimidate you, it's a good chance, just, you know, lower it down to an action goal. Action goals are easier to achieve. Outcome goals might have multiple actions that you need to achieve. Action goals, one action, right? Just every action goal is just a single action. You can't set an action goal for 20. That's 20 goals, right? So one goal per action. So if it scares or intimidates you to set goals, this simplifies and makes it easier, because you don't have to be so intimidated about how's it going to go and whether it's going to work out or whether it's going to look bad. It's like, hey, I didn't have any of those goals. I don't care what the outcome is. Even if you do, it's like you're not making that the story. You're setting it up for yourself to really just care as to whether or not you act, whether or not you do something about this. Make sense? All right. If you get overwhelmed when it comes to goals, like you've got this big goal and it's like, oh my God, I got to do 20 things. I don't know what to do first. And you start getting turned around and it just like, it's not even scary and intimidating. It's just like overwhelming. There's so much to do. I'm so far away from my goal. It looks too big. Action goal. Action goals are smaller. So it crunches down the idea of a goal into a singular action. So helpful to have that work that way. And also, if you're a control freak, that's the kind of goal for you. Action goals are the goal for you. I mean, you know, if you feel like you're out of control when you're working towards an outcome goal, like an end goal, yeah, just set action goals, because you control your actions, gives you more certainty, more control on the journey, because it concentrates on the journey rather than some destination that you may or may not ever arrive at, even if you want to arrive at it. So that's what it's good for. If you're a control freak, you end up being kind of non-committal, or you get overwhelmed, scared, or intimidated by goals in general, action goals, move it down to action goals, simplify it, make it easy on yourself. Start with those before you go into any other kind of higher level goals, more future-oriented goals. Now, downsides for action goals. First is it could waste time. Like what if you set an action goal and you could have gotten the outcome just by like doing something else? And an action goal could leave you rigid, right? Like, oh, that's the action I'm going to take. Well, what if another opportunity to achieve the ultimate goal you want comes up and you're so focused on the action goal because you're kind of stuck on that. That's the goal. That's the line that you want to walk. That's the game that you really want to win. You could have had it all, but you missed that. So it can be wasteful. It can put you in a position where you're rigid and you're not flexible towards the real thing that you want, because we don't want this thing, right? We say we want it, but we usually want to avoid action, right? We just want the outcome. We just want what we want. So the reason why we set action goals is usually to have to make us face the things that we don't really want to deal with. But if you can actually get the outcome without having to take certain actions, then why not? Nothing wrong with that. So it'll leave you rigid, and a lot of times it'll waste a lot of time and actually have you do things you may not even have to do. It kind of makes you into a slave in a way. You're a slave to the actions that you said the action that you claimed that is the goal versus the thing that you really want out of that. Okay, so there's some tyranny that can show up from action goals. They also could be boring because it's like, wow, I got to do the same thing over and over again in order to achieve this goal. And that could create drudgery or boredom, tedium, if you will. So if you're easily bored or you don't want to kind of be a slave to some goal that you set because it's something you don't really want to do necessarily, and you'd like to be flexible on your approach to goals or to achieving the goal, action goal, probably not the approach that you want to take. Okay, let's talk about outcome goals. So an outcome goal, I mentioned before, that's the focus on the outcome. Let's talk about the upsides first. The outcome goal is what you really want. So, I mean, just to put it as simply as humanly possible, this lets you focus on actually what you selfishly want for yourself. That's kind of nice. It's a very different focus than all the crap you got to do in order to get there. It's more exciting as a result, usually more motivating. So if you need that motivation, a lot of times the outcome goal is where it's at. That'll get you excited, get you kind of drawn forward to that future that you want to create. It's more flexible and agile on the way to the outcome because there's no commit. You didn't like say you had to take this action or that action. It doesn't mean you won't have a strategy to achieve that, but it's up to you. You can change your strategy at any time. It doesn't change the goal. It doesn't change the outcome that you ultimately really want. So it's more flexible, more agile. It puts you in charge of what really matters also. Action is going to make a difference for you, for sure. It'll get you towards your goal, maybe. But what really matters to you is not doing a bunch of work. What really matters to you is the outcome. I'll give you an example. There's a really high-level guru that I used to work for and work with. He came into town one day, and I was on his team, basically. And the team was supposed to get all these enrollments for him. So enrollments into his coaching program, so to speak. And so they were going to work. They had this goal, this big outcome goal that they wanted to achieve of enrolling these 5 people. And they went up to this guru who was there to kind of like coach them and support them on their way to the goal. And they said, okay, Anurag, this is what's going on. We are going to spend all afternoon working towards this goal. We're going to make all these calls. We're going to try to enroll all these people. And then hopefully we'll reach our outcome, which is like, I think it was like 5 or 10 enrollments. Let's say 5, the simplicity's sake. And he asked them, okay, are you committed to that goal? And they say, yeah, we're committed. And he said, okay, great. Go to work. Go for it. And they went and did 2 hours of work. And he walked in on them, and they're like their office, and said, okay, how's it going? How's it going? Did you make progress towards your goal? Yeah. Did you achieve the goal yet? And they said, no, we haven't really made any enrollments yet. We've been making all these calls. We're taking a lot of action, but we're nowhere, and we're really not anywhere closer to our outcome goal that we have. And he said, you guys aren't really committed to this. And they said, no, we really are. We swear to God, look at all the work we're doing. And he said, you're not committed to the outcome. You're just committed to do a bunch of work. You're not committed to the outcome. You're really just committed to actions. And they thought about it and they said, well, what do you mean we're not committed to the outcome? We're just committed to actions. He said, look at all the work you're focused. You're just focused on doing all these actions, doing all this work, jumping through all these hoops. You know, like, I don't know why that's what you're really committed to versus the outcome. But like, look, let me ask you this. If you really just had to get that outcome, like right now, who would you call? Like, what would you tell them? Like, who could you enroll immediately? And they thought about it and they said, well, hey, I know somebody who filled out this lead card, and I know them personally. I know they are ready to enroll. They were at the guest event the other night, and they really want to enroll. Like, all I need to do is call them, and I totally think if I could get a hold of them, they're going to enroll. And then somebody else thought of somebody like that. It was like, you know what? I just talked to this person like yesterday, and you know, they're on the cusp of it. I think if I have this one last conversation, they're going to enroll. And they came up with like 6-7 people right off the top of their head that if they just called them, they would get a bunch of enrollments. They started thinking about the outcome and the best way to immediately get the outcome. They weren't even thinking about that before. Why? Because they were too focused on the darn action. So suddenly, when this guru asked them this question, is like, what would you do if you actually just had to get the outcome right now? And they started applying their kind of thought process to the outcome goal rather than an action goal that they had not really talked about, but they really had an action goal rather than an outcome goal. They immediately started getting that outcome. They went back to work, and like 30 minutes later, they had accomplished their goal, and everybody went home. Like, they didn't have to take all that action. They just said, okay, if I'm committed to this outcome, what would I do if I had to have that happen right now in the least amount of action or no action at all? Like, what would I do? How would that happen? And they came up with all these great answers, right? And so the strategy changed. It made them more flexible. It put them in charge of the outcome versus all this make work and wheel spinning that never needed to happen if they had simply truly had an outcome goal for real, not just gave it lip service like this guru had noticed that was really what was going on there. And he was able to uncover that for them, right? So those are the upsides of outcome goals. It really, I mean, goals are so powerful if you let them drive you in these ways when you have an outcome goal specifically. Makes you flexible, makes you in charge of what matters. It's motivating. It draws you forward. It helps you skip past wasteful actions and be agile and flexible in your approach. To do it truly gives you tremendous amounts of freedom as well. So who's that good for? Who are outcome goals good for? So it's good if you're really ambitious. Like if you have a heavy amount of ambition, you're like, I want it all. I want it now. I want it as soon as humanly possible. The outcome goals are where it's at, as long as you're not intimidated by them. If you're bored easily, if you hate drudgery and you really like to kind of change things up quite a bit, outcome goals where it's at, not action goals. Action goals are going to suffocate you, right? If you're very freedom driven, if you're very sensitive to like getting bogged down with bureaucracy and rules and drudgery and stuff like that, and you really just want to do whatever you want to do, but you still want what you want, outcome goals give you a tremendous amount of freedom because you can do whatever you want to reach the goal as long as it's something that'll actually support you in reaching the goal. You can be flexible. You could try one thing one day and something the next day. So it could be really great. If you are really confident that you can achieve the outcome, just set an outcome goal. If you really believe you can and it doesn't intimidate you, then it'll probably be the best way to go in general. If you're more of a linear thinker and you think kind of in simple steps, then outcome goals are better for you, not because you're not thinking in terms of actions, because you actually probably are, but because since you don't, how do I put this? Since you don't have an issue about kind of getting wound up and overwhelmed in future stuff, your natural ability to take things step by step will allow you to continue progress towards an outcome, even when the focus is on the outcome itself. Does that make sense? Let me restate that a little bit differently. Let's say you're very linear thinking oriented. You think simply and kind of step by step. kind of like straight line type of thinking process. Okay, you're not circular in your thinking. You don't think in mind maps. You're not like a brainstormer or a creative type. You just think, hey, 1 + 1 is 2. I just got to do this, this, and this, and I'll get where I want to go. Okay, you keep it simple and you focus on the simple actions that you need to take next. If you set an action goal, you're just redundantly focusing yourself on the stuff that you already naturally focus on, and you could actually get lost in the process. If you set an action goal, it'll help you stay focused on where you're going. But in addition to that, because your capability is to take things step by step in a linear fashion and not get like kind of wound up and go into all these side tracks and back alleyways and stuff like that, it'll just accelerate your progress towards the goal that you actually want, because you have the capacity to take things step by step and take the next action in simple terms, right? If you're a more complex thinker, outcome goals can have you outthinking yourself and get you stuck. It puts you in overwhelm or procrastination or deer in the headlights. So if you're impatient, final piece, if you're somebody that's pretty impatient, you want things fast, outcome goals are great. So if those things that I just said kind of more describe you, it's probably better just to go for the outcome goal. If you're kind of a go-getter, somebody who just wants to get on with it, and somebody that just is powerful in their action and doesn't hesitate, perfect to have outcome goals. Downsides of outcome goals: they can be scary if you get intimidated by goals generally. And so that's why I was saying action goals are better for people that get intimidated by goals. I'm not intimidated by goals. I wouldn't say that, but I don't enjoy having goals. Like outcome goals, I don't enjoy those because I'm like, they're out in the future. I don't feel like I have control. I'm a little bit of a control freak myself. I like to be comfortable kind of in my groove, if you will, or in my grind. And I don't want to get out of that. I don't want to have to look up all the time and be like, where am I going? And where's my outcome? And how am I doing? Am I getting there? Like that's tough for me. It's a struggle for me. So it's not like scary, but it's a little intimidating. It's not comfortable for me. So I'm much more of an action goal type. So if it's scary for you, probably don't use outcome goals. If you get confused easily when you're going after goals, you get overwhelmed. If you tend to get in deer in the headlights mode when you have a goal, like, oh my God, I'm frozen now that I've got this goal. Yeah, do action goals, because your issue is action, right? So focus on the action and stay there and try to simplify. And if you have trouble with focus, like staying focused, you might want to just go back, kind of backpedal into action goals before you think about really getting serious about keeping the focus on outcome goals. Now, by the way, hybrid of this is you can have both. You can say, this is my action goal, and this is my outcome goal, and these are my action goals. Right? You could do that. That's okay. But I'm going to tell you, in the boot camp, you should have one priority goal that's above all else. One goal to rule them all, right? So in that case, you really got to choose. Decide who you are. Decide what's the best for you in this scenario. And if you set a big outcome and you're like not doing anything for whatever reason, move back to action. Take control back. Get comfortable with actions first. I'll tell you, when I don't feel like I have mastery over a particular outcome yet, because I just never tried it before, I set action goals. Because I know I'm in control of my actions. I don't know if I can achieve the outcome or not, but I know I can control the action, right? So if you're getting overwhelmed or stagnating or getting confused or procrastinating on anything to get the outcome, move back to an action and just commit to the action. Make that your priority goal for the boot camp. If you set an action goal, but it's not as motivating for you, or it's kind of boring and you really want to get on with it and make something happen, move it to an outcome. So how do you do that? How do you make these changes? If you have an action goal and you want to shift it to an outcome, ask yourself, what outcome do I really want that if I took this action repeatedly and successfully, that I would actually achieve? Like, what would the outcome be that I care about? And whatever the answer to that question is, that's your outcome goal, right? Same thing, going back from outcome to action goal. If you have an outcome goal, let's say get 5 paying clients, ask yourself, what is the most important action that I have to take most frequently, that if I don't take it, it's almost guaranteed that I will fail to reach that outcome? What's the one action that's the most important, highest priority out of all of it? And if you've been watching these, you know what your action probably is if you're playing our game. So ask that question. The answer to that question is your action goal. Make sense? So ask those questions. If you need to switch, if you haven't created a goal yet, kind of think about which one is going to make sense to you in this area and starting your coaching business. If it's really intimidating for you to make a big goal, then just set an action goal in like 30 days. You got 30 days to take those actions at certain amounts, certain measurements. And if you hit that, it doesn't make any difference whether you get clients or whether you make all this money or any of those things. You still win. You get to win. And that's really the bottom line with either of these goals. The point of goals is to focus action and focus intention and focus your energy. For sure, that's helpful. But more important, just as important as that, especially when I'm working with a client on goals and they're fretting, they're dealing with issues and problems that are getting in their way, usually it's just like they got to move their goal back to set themselves up to win. Your goal, if you look at your goal and you're like, that doesn't look like it's going to help me win, just knowing myself, knowing what my tendencies are, then you probably got the wrong type of goal. You want to switch your goal type, okay? Or massage your goal in some way until you know, hey, if I focus on that, if that's my priority goal for the boot camp, like I'm empowered, that's going to support me, and I know I'm going to win if that's my goal, right? Until you can say that, you probably need to work on that goal a bit. I'm not saying that it's not going to, I'm not saying that setting a goal will never be like a little stressful or something that'll light you up in a way that's not always comfortable. Like that could totally happen, but that could still set you up to win. So I'm not talking about perfection or total comfort or just putting you on easy street. Goals aren't there to like make it easy for you, right? But they definitely should set you up to win. Okay, you need to play a game, and the goal, like in soccer, the goal is the goal, right? I got to get that goal. So if I'm a really great soccer player, I have a great relationship with that goal or that hoop in basketball, let's say. Like that's like home for me. I'm comfortable with that. If I'm not comfortable with it, I'm at least driven towards it. I care about that thing, right? So, and I'm empowered in my journey to win in that game, right? So whatever your goal is, set a goal that is a game that you can win, and that is a game that you feel like it's gonna be a win for you as well. Does that make sense? And if it's not, watch which goal type that you're using and ask yourself, is it any of the issues that we talked about today that might be, getting in your grill here? And if so, then again, swap your goal type. And if that's not the case, we have a lot of education in boot camp around goal setting, whether it's working with your clients or just working with yourself and how you deal with your own goals in your coaching business. So work on that piece, work on those elements. I'm not going to belabor them here because this has already been covered. I'm not going to refer you to other stuff that you should be going through already, but bring them up in our coaching sessions. Let us know in the QUICKSTART, in the Facebook group, and we'll support you with it. We'll get into a conversation. You get some coaching on your goal, on clarifying it and making sure it's going to really support you as well. So do that. Make sure you handle having the best possible goal that you're going to win at, whether it's action or outcome. I totally honor and respect wherever you're going to come from in this boot camp. But you can always switch it up later. It's only 30 days. So, you got the rest of your life to perfect how you deal with goals and how you work towards the destiny that you really want to create for your coaching business or anything else in your life for that matter. So I'll talk to you soon. Take care until then.